The one that I read it to you hearing is out of the Jonathan and David storyline. Jonathan and David are friends, and they had sworn an oath of allegiance to each other. But Jonathan was also the son of Saul, who was the first king of Israel, who succumbs to the evil and nasty spirit of jealousy. Saul is king of all of Israel and has command of the entire kingdom, but because he is jealous of the gifts that God has bestowed upon David, Jonathan's friend, he gets the best of him. And I need to drop a footnote right here. The gifts that David possessed, David had nothing to do with them, because they were gifts. And because they were gifts, that meant that he didn't give them to himself, nor did he earn them. Because if he could have worked and earned them, they wouldn't have been gifts. But God, somebody say, but God, out of his sovereign nature, chose David and gifted him to be a talented, mighty man of valor. And because of his popularity with the people, Saul becomes jealous. And how many people do you know whose lives have been significantly altered and changed because they were jealous of someone else? Now, don't say anything, don't call anybody's name out because they may be on your pew. But just silently think about it, because there are people all over this land and country who are jealous and are setting into motion a monster that will eventually eat them alive. In this text, great sorrow has fallen over the nation of Israel. The Israelites and the Philistines have been at war, and a tragedy has occurred out on the summit called Gilboa. Out atop Gilboa, Saul and his 3 sons and his armor bearers are found dead. Now, the Bible tells us exactly what happens to Saul, but it's vague as it relates to Saul's sons and his servants. It says that Saul, seeing the Philistines coming and fearing what they would do to him once they got to him, fell on his sword and commits suicide. You have to be careful about the spirit of jealousy, I tell you, because jealousy will make you do things that you can't undo. And it can cause people around you, especially those who love you and respect you, to do things that cannot be explained. I'm going to get out of that because that might get in somebody's business. Somebody say, get out of that, preacher. So these Philistines that they're at war with, they are a ruthless and barbaric group. And when they came upon Saul and his sons out on Gilboa, they decapitated the heads of Saul and his sons from their bodies. Then they plastered their headless bodies against the wall at Bethshean. Back at the palace where Saul lived, there's a sense of urgency and panic and desperation because the inhabitants of the palace knew that the Philistines would soon be coming after them. So with all deliberate speed, the family of Saul, with all of his servants, rushed to evacuate the palace. There was a nurse responsible for a young man named Mephibosheth, a 5-year-old son who was the son of Jonathan, whose dead, headless body is now hanging on the face of Bethshean. Y'all stay with me because this is going to get better. Somebody say, stay with the preacher. It's going to get better. In the nurse's haste to evacuate, she drops Mephibosheth, and when he hits the floor, you can hear the crushing of the bones in his ankles. And the Bible says that the breaks were so severe that the boy grew up lame and crippled in both of his feet. Now the nurse picks him up and takes him to the other side of the Jordan, to an obscure village called Lodebar. Now on the surface it sounds okay, because actually they escaped with their lives. The Philistines were out to kill him. But, somebody say but they ended up in a place called Lodebar. And Lodebar was a dismal and desolate place. Lodebar was called the place of no pastures. And in the ancient Near East, where wealth, position, and power was measured by the size of your herd, nobody chose to live in a place that had no taxes. So if you landed in Lodebar, you were out of the mainstream of society. You were isolated and alone and outside and away from any outside contact. I told you that it was going to get better. Y'all stay with me because it's going to get better still. So for the next 20 years, this boy walks around lame, limping, and alone in a town where nobody knows who he is. It's going to get personal now because this text is transcendent in its application. This text transcends time and space and culture. I know I'm right about it because there are people today who are lame and limping in their spirits and living in a lonely place. They are lonely because nobody really knows them. Or they won't admit it. Y'all looking at me funny, but there are people who are lame and limping emotionally and nobody knows. There are others who are lame and limping and can't rise above their disappointments and they have not shared it with anybody. There are others who have been lame and limping because of abuse and molestation, but nobody knows because they haven't shared it with anybody. There are those who clap their hands and pat their feet and even do a holy dance, but underneath they are lame and limping and nobody knows. Nobody knows that underneath their skin, down inside their spirit, they are crippled and afraid to let anybody know. They come to church and sit erect with their heads held high, clapping on the outside, but crippled on the inside. Am I preaching to anybody up in here today? Is there anybody in here who knows anything about being lame and crippled in your spirit? I'm not talking about being physically crippled and needing crutches to get around. I'm talking about being emotionally crippled and psychologically crippled and spiritually crippled. I'm talking about wanting to pray and think. I'm talking about wanting to do what's right and doing the opposite. I'm talking about knowing what's right and doing wrong anyway. I'm talking about thinking that everybody is looking at you and thinking about you and talking about y'all looking at me funny, but I'm going to keep hitting this thing until I land in your camp. I'm talking about thinking that everybody is out to get you and being angry and negative all the time. I'm talking about being a victim and feeling sorry for yourself and having low self-esteem. I'm talking about thinking that another man is going to fix it and another woman is going to fix it and another job is going to fix it. I'm talking about having a Humpty Dumpty mentality. Y'all know about the Humpty Dumpty mentality, don't you? Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. You see, that's the mistake that we make. We're always looking for the king's men to get us back together again. But you need to be looking for the king because only the king can put crippled folks back together again. Tell somebody and say, take me to the king. 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 He'll put you back together again. Some folk are crippled financially, crippled emotionally, and crippled spiritually, but the king can put you back together again. Was crippled and had a limp, limping on the job, and limping in church, and limping in your relationship, and limping in your pocketbook, and limping in your spirit. When somebody took you to the king,